Welcome to today's live chapter reading of Notebook Mysteries, Changes and Challenges by Kimberly Mullins. Chapter 1, 1885, present-day Chicago. Emma rolled over in the bed and reached out to brush the brown curls off of his forehead. "Dear one, you need to wake up, sleepyhead." "Sun's not out yet," he said, in a muffled voice, lying on his stomach, with his face turned toward her, partially burrowed in the pillow. "What has that got to do with anything?" she teased. He opened his eyes and turned on his side, pulling her to him, murmuring, "Good morning, Emma." "Good morning, Jeremy," she said as he turned on his back, pulling her on top of him. She sank into him with a sigh. A little while later, they came up for air. "You need to get moving," she reminded him. "I thought I just had," he commented wryly. "Oh, you!" "Out," she said as she pointed at the bookcase and not the door. She stayed in bed and watched him rise slowly, wrapping his long, lean body in a robe. He leaned over to her and said, "See you at breakfast." "Definitely," she said. He moved the bookcase aside to reveal a door to his room. Chapter 2. Things have definitely changed in the past 2 years, thought Emma as she settled back on her bed. It began with their quest for Mr. Carlyle to protect his granddaughter Millie. He believed she was being taken advantage of financially. The case had turned suddenly. Millie was discovered to be the mastermind of a smuggling organization and was responsible for multiple murders. Her death by hanging had brought the case to a dramatic end. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, Emma mused, Mr. Carlyle died of natural causes before he could hear his granddaughter's guilty verdict. Then, a surprising thing happened after the funeral. A lawyer contacted Emma to attend a reading of Mr. Carlyle's will. The will, thought Emma, offered many complications and opportunities. The day of Mr. Carlyle's funeral, after they returned home, Emma had been working on lace designs in the sitting room when Dora called her from the foyer. "Emma, a note was delivered for you." She walked into the foyer to take the note, reading it quickly. "What is it?" asked Dora curiously. "It's from Mr. Carlyle's lawyer. It looks like I'm invited to the reading of the will tomorrow," she said absently. "Why is it so soon, and why invite you?" asked Dora, perplexed. "The timing must be at Mr. Carlyle's request," Emma murmured thoughtfully. "He might have left me a little something. I did adore his library, and it would be nice to have something to remind me of him." Chapter 3, 1883, Lawyer's Office. Emma woke early that morning, determined to be on time for her appointment with Mr. Burns. She rode her bike over to his office, placing it on her shoulder as she entered. She saw a large man in a blue suit speaking to a gentleman sitting at a desk. "Mr. Burns," she thought. The large man straightened when he saw her, folded his hands in front of him, and assumed a solemn expression. "Miss Evans? Mr. Burns?" He acknowledged her with a nod of his head. "Call me Emma, please," she offered. "Call me Andrew." Mr. Burns looked at the man sitting at the desk and said, "Jason, please help Miss Evans." Jason stood up, motioned toward the bike, and said, "I can take that for you." She thanked him as she took it from her and moved it to another room. Mr. Burns offered his elbow and escorted her into his office. As they entered, she found it was a very sober room, with a heavy desk, leather chairs, dark floor rugs, and official-looking framed documents on the walls. She looked around, curious to see who else would be at the reading. When she saw she was alone, she looked at Mr. Burns and asked, "Will anyone else be here?" "No, I've already notified persons that have small bequests. They will not be here for this communication," he said absently, putting on his glasses as he moved to sit behind the desk. "Please, have a seat." Emma sat in the heavy brown chair facing the desk. Her eyes darted around the room and finally settled on the lawyer. She watched him pull paperwork from his top desk drawer and was a bit startled when he abruptly began to read. Emma didn't understand what she was hearing at first. Something about her being the sole inheritor. She shook her head and asked in astonishment, "I was left what?" The lawyer removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Mr. Carlyle contacted me after Millicent's arrest and made the changes to his will at that time. He left the bulk of his estate to you." But why me? I'm the one who caused Millie's arrest. I would have thought there would have been some animosity, she said, shaking her head, not understanding. When Mr. Carlyle started the investigation, he was suspicious and believed his granddaughter was involved in something nefarious. I think he sent you in to uncover if she deserved her inheritance. There at the end, he had a feeling things were not going to turn out well and wanted the money to go to something positive, he said patiently. Okay, she said, rolling her shoulders. I never turned down a challenge. Where do I sign? Mr. Burns smiled, glad there wouldn't be an argument. He stood and shuffled the papers to her side of the desk. As Emma signed, he commented, There will be some time before the money is officially released. There will be a probate hearing, and once that is completed, I will contact you about the dispersal. She thanked him and left the lawyer's office in a daze, walking her bike instead of riding it. As she made her way down the sidewalk, she kept thinking, so much money and so much responsibility. Hey, Em, a voice called. Emma didn't hear it. She was wrapped up in her thoughts. Emma? Jeremy said, touching her shoulder. Startled, Emma whirled to defend herself and grabbed the hand placed on her shoulder. When she realized who it was, she said, Jeremy, sorry, I was distracted. He pulled her in close and murmured, I could tell. He stepped back and looked down at her. What happened at the lawyer's office? Get a nice book or a small gift? Emma had told him she was invited to the reading of the will. She leaned close and tilted her head to speak into his ear. He left me everything. Don't get too excited, she added when she saw his expression. She explained how the inheritance would work. It is an added responsibility. I will have to set up a charity to manage the money. He wants me to give it away to people who need it. It's still amazing, he said, dazed at the size of the estate Emma now owned. Yes, she agreed, not thinking about the money, but about the responsibility. Any plans yet? He asked, knowing her propensity to be organized. She smiled wryly. I'm working on it. Can you and Cole come by tomorrow night to meet and discuss the inheritance with the team? Only if I can get you alone after, he said as he leaned in for a kiss. They both enjoyed the interlude. Want me to see you home? He asked. No, I'm okay. I think I'll ride the rest of the way, she said as she climbed on her bike. I'll be on my way also. I'm working a case at Citizens Bank downtown. I'll be there all week if you need anything, he said. Okay, see you tomorrow, she said. He leaned in for another kiss. See you tomorrow, he confirmed, and waved her off. She rode to the boarding house, parked her bike in the back, and entered through the kitchen door. Dora heard her coming and ran over to hug her. Sister, how did it go? Emma shook her head and sat down at the table with Tim. He had his books opened and looked up. Hi, Emma. He noticed she looked distracted and asked, Everything all right? Looking at them both, she said, Well, looks like we have another opportunity to bring the team together. She went on to explain her conversation with the lawyer. I think a team meeting to discuss forward steps would be appropriate. Dora and Tim looked at each other and then at Emma before nodding in agreement. I asked Jeremy if he and Cole could be here tomorrow after dinner, Emma said. Making notes, Tim said. That should work. We'll let Jake and Thomas know to be here. Emma went to bed early, thinking about the new responsibility and what it would mean. One team member who was on her mind. Someone who hadn't been around for a while, because of her. I miss him, she thought decidedly. It's time to bring him back to the team. She got up extra early to make her his favorite treat, strudel. She was sliding the trays out of the oven when Dora entered the kitchen, wrapping a headband around her hair. You're up early this morning, she commented. Emma glanced over. Yes, I thought we might need a dessert tonight, and since I invited everyone without telling you, I thought I'd help out. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate it, Dora said sincerely as she started to get breakfast organized. There was a soft knock on the door, and Dora let in a yawning Amy, who greeted them and quickly began to get organized for the day. Dora noticed the box sitting on the table. Dessert for tonight, you say? If that's so, who's the box for? Something occurred to her as she waited for the answer. Is it for Tony? She knew it was his favorite. It is, Emma said as she added strudel to the box and used a string to hold it closed. I want to approach him about coming back to help with cases and be an active part of the team. Does he know you're coming? Dora asked suspiciously. She had concerned about Emma's abrupt way with Tony. Yes, I sent him a note and asked to see him before work this morning, said, finishing up the box. Dora exhaled a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Another thought occurred to her. Does Jeremy know about this? Emma frowned over at her. Jeremy knows Tony and I are still close. You haven't been close for a while, Dora reminded her. Well, that last case was involved, she said wryly, but I plan to change that with this, she said, indicating the box. You're putting a lot of faith in a pastry, Dora said with a laugh. You might mention it to Jeremy, she suggested. I might, she said as a compromise. Emma cleaned up her work area and stored the extra strudel for the evening meeting. She helped get breakfast on the table and spent the morning working on some lace designs, watching the time so she could meet Tony at the museum before they opened. The clock chimed. She gathered up her things and headed to the kitchen. I'm headed out to see Tony, she kissed Dora on the cheek on her way out. Don't forget your magic pastry, Dora teased. Emma grabbed the pastry box and sent her a grin as she headed out to get her bike. The wind was refreshed on her face and she enjoyed the ride. She was lifting her bike on her shoulder when she saw Tony sitting on the steps. She put it down and rolled it over to where he was sitting. Hi, I thought I would meet you inside, she said, taking extra time to settle her bike against the stairs and adjust the pastry box. When she finally glanced back and saw he was smiling, his hair falling into his eyes, her fingers itched to adjust his hair instead. Instead, she just stared for a long moment and lifted the box in her hand. Your favorite? Yes, he said quietly. She didn't notice he wasn't looking at the box. He averted his eyes when she looked at him. Why don't we walk over to the park, he suggested. That would be nice, she said with a quick smile. I can walk the bike. He stood and took it from her as they moved onward. A comfortable quiet settled around them. They found an empty bench to sit on and opened the box of strudel. She let him eat one before starting a conversation. Tony, we miss you, and the team would love to have you participate as a full member. I miss seeing and talking to you, and I miss the family. I also miss the excitement, he admitted. She laughed at that and commented, We're never short on that. I guess the question is, can we be as close as we once were, but not be together, he asked. Tony, she said, touching his hand and looking deep into his eyes. I want to be close. I want to share what's happening in my life and hear what's happening in yours. He set his other hand on top of their clasped hands and squeezed. I do too. I've missed this so much. For over an hour, they sat and talked about their lives and what had happened since the breakup. So, Mrs. Smith, she teased. He turned red and said with a smile, I like her. She's taken me to her tailor and shown me how to dress. I'm enjoying her company. I've noticed, said Emma, touching his new collar. Very dapper. She seems good for you. I don't see her missing an event because of an ongoing mystery. No, he murmured. She wouldn't do that. You never mentioned what's up with Mr. Smith, she asked consideringly. He passed away some time ago, he said simply. Emma looked worried, and Tony noticed, saying, Now stop that. He died of natural causes. He was older and had a heart condition. Emma smiled brightly. Well, I am a bit busy, so I may not be able to investigate that. He laughed and continued. I've also been studying art history, and the museum is paying for school. I'm learning to tell how to tell if paintings are authentics, the type of paint used, the cracking and wear on a picture which could indicate when it was painted. I'm especially excited about eventually traveling and seeing Paris. Philip and I have been invited there this year to authenticate some paintings. Paris? Oh, that's wonderful. I hope to get there one day. You must tell me everything when you get back, she said wistfully. I will, he promised. He turned serious for a moment and looked at her searchingly. I assume that you and Jeremy, his voice trailed off. Yes, we're together now. Tony, it was after we broke up, I promise, Emma said softly. He nodded, believing her, and asked, Do you see it going long term? He knew how she felt about marriage. She thought about that and said, Right now I do, but I try not to think that far ahead. That's true. Have you told him you're inviting me to rejoin the team, he asked. Tony, you were always welcome, she said, distressed. I know, but I needed some time to find out what I wanted, separate from you. Yes, we operated so much as a couple, it was hard to find where we started and stopped as individuals. To get back to the initial question, will you tell him? He asked, feeling he needed to know the answer. I'm a little confused about that, she admitted. Dora brought it up too. I just don't typically run things by him, work or case related. We do have some overlaps when additional resources are needed by us or Pinkertons, but no communications like that. Emma, I think you should realize that this will go past work issues. It's personal. I would rather not have any drama tonight at your meeting, he stressed. Oh, there is that, she conceded. Okay, I'll head over after and mention it to him. I won't be asking permission, she warned. I didn't think you were, he murmured, watching her. I can do this, he thought. We can be friends again. What the future holds, I just don't know. Tony, are you happy? She asked, concerned by his intense expression. Me? Yes, I am. I feel I'm on the path I'm meant to be on, he replied in a steady voice. Yeah, me too. They finished the pastry, enjoying their time together. They talked quietly as they walked back to the museum. Before leaving, she asked, Tonight? Tonight, he confirmed, and they parted. She didn't look back as she rode off, so she did not see that he waited until she was out of sight before slowly climbing the stairs to the museum.